statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Augusta, Branchville, Lafayette, and Sussex post offices. And notice sent to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, and the clerk of the boroughs of Branchville and Sussex, and the townships of Frankfort, Lafayette, and Orange. Our mission statement: High Point Regional High School, in partnership with staff, family, and community, is dedicated to the quest for individual excellence. By fostering high standards of achievement, we prepare students to become responsible and productive members of a diverse society. Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Danner.
Here.
Mr. Dunn.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Risden.
Here.
Mr. Veely.
Here.
Dr. Ripley.
Here. We have public comments on agenda items only. Anyone? None being seen, we'll move on to other business, where Ms. Joseph will report the official election results as per countywide report.
The election results are as follows. Branchville, Deborah Anderson, 195, unopposed. Frankfurt, Michael Voigtpugh, 662, unopposed. Lafayette, Ted Miller, 280, unopposed. In Wantage, we have Wayne Dunn with 795, with Nicholas D'Agostino with 788.
Congratulations to those winners. And we'll move on to the approval of minutes for the regular meeting and the executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Aye. We're going to move on to presentations. Student Council report. Adam Ehoff, Speaker of the House, will update the board on student council activities. No? Anyone here? No update?
Okay, good, one time for me.
Anyone else like to fill in? The HPEA, where Mrs. Christine Henry, President, will
Okay.
update us on.
Whenever I put anything out, I get so many responses that I have to limit, and I already have limited and put some on for December, so bear with me. Our staff raised over $7,000 for various charitable donations in 1 year for our Jeans Days, and John has been gracious in the Jeans Days, and we contribute when we can. We're now currently working, the staff is working on providing turkey baskets to the community, to those families that are in need. Each department is in charge of providing a full Thanksgiving meal for families. They are delivered by our special ed department, and Marie Sullivan. And that's been a long time tradition, doing that for a long, long time. Ed Levens, Alex Gonzalez, Brian, Emma, Dave Rupert are organized the outdoor rec program. They took 6 students fishing to Lake Ontario last week. Some of the pictures are amazing. The goal of the club is to promote environmental activities, outdoor activities, and marine biology. Many of these students may never leave the state, so they get an opportunity to get out with this club. And it was a trip of a lifetime. In the public speaking and debate class, Julie Clausen and Corey Loyola are doing the Great Thanksgiving Listen. This is pretty impressive. A project through StoryCorps and the Library of Congress to get high school students to conduct an interview with an older loved one on Thanksgiving. Students are recording their interviews on an app on their phones so that the Library of Congress can make them part of the huge world history initiative. So they're very proud of that. I am the advisor of Pass It Along. We did a coat drive within the last month. Students, staff, and community, it was on our Facebook page, brought in coats, and my community service group put, they call it note in a coat, so the kids made heartfelt notes and messages, and we stuffed them in a coat of every pocket, and the coats were this little to, very large. We collected well over 100 of them. I didn't count them all, but they're down in the main office to be picked up tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
It is a lot, tomorrow morning. Let the guy in. Let's see. Jill Schaefer wrote to me that, and this is just kind of going along with what Rob sometimes tells you about our classroom initiatives. And Jill Schaefer wrote, and I thought this was pretty cool. In her freshman classes, they just finished reading the book Speak, which is about a young girl entering her freshman year of high school. The character deals with issues such as underage drinking, rape, bullying, depression. In conjunction with our week of respect and school violence awareness, the students created a PowerPoint on various topics relating to the text. They researched, they presented projects on stalking, internet safety, verbal abuse, dating and violence, family violence. They also were required to look up and research local organizations that can help any student that's experiencing anything such as that, or any person that is. And after presenting their projects, they spent a few days creating informational flyers on those organizations and posted them throughout the building. So thought that was impressive. And these others are amazing. Our new AP Environmental teacher, Erin
Baker.
Thank you, Baker. That was wild, well, she was a student. AP Environmental Science students, listen, this is pretty impressive, are participating in a live webinar with NASA tomorrow, the 18th of November, to discuss the melting of the Greenland ice sheet. They'll have the ability to see each other, ask questions about the cutting-edge research that directly relates to the sea level rise around the world and including New Jersey. Also, the AP Environmentalist Science are working with Walk Hill River National Wildlife Refuge, on the 30th of November to collaborate with biologists and another class from Warwick Valley High School on an invasive plant species survey project, and he's hoping this will be a long-term collaboration between themselves and the refuge with ongoing research projects in numerous areas, including aquatic ecosystem ecology. I'm going to mention one more, even though I have more than that. Science research student Caitlin McMillan is going to meet with Dr., forgive me if I mispronounce it, Maracandis, chief of the Genetic Epidemiology Research Branch at the National Institute of Health, that's huge, and the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, early next month to discuss the students' research on sleep disorders and migraines. And there's more, but I'll save it for the next one. That's pretty impressive.
It really
huh?
is, and I like hearing all that stuff.
Pretty impressive, yeah.
Did Mr. Zwicky plan this fishing trip?
Mr. Sawicki, I don't believe did. I believe it was those guys I mentioned.
Yes, they have invited me, but I have not had the chance to go. And they go out in kayaks, which is far more, requires a lot more skill with it. So I would,
That's something higher.
The Montague Board of Education Liaison, Mr. Gilligan, do you have anything?
I have nothing for you from my board. If you have anything for me to take back for our meeting, please let me know.
Could you please communicate to them that we continue to be encouraged by the performance and the conduct of the children from Montague, how they have assimilated exceptionally well into our community, and we view Montague as a part of our school, a part of our community, and a part of our lives. And we want them to feel that way in every capacity, because we are all in for Montague, and if in any way that can be communicated so as to assuage any concerns, it's very important to us that they're aware of that.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
The principal's report, Mr. Talloway.
Everybody, how we doing? Good evening. I have the report for the school as well as the athletic report. We can just continue on from one to the other. Talking here. The first marking period has ended successfully already, as hard as that is to believe, and we are looking at the mid-marking period for the second marking period, which will be December 11th already. So it is fast and furious as we get into these holiday years, holiday months, and like Ms. Henry said, a lot of things that are great things that are happening inside our classroom, inside our hallways every day. There's a couple highlights that we've had since the last time we met. We had rehearsal for murder, which was a fantastic mystery that took place over Halloween weekend. Thank you to Teresa Riccardi and all the cast and crew for another fantastic show. It was absolutely a mystery. For those that had a chance to see it, so watching CSI on stage, trying to figure out what was going on. They did a fantastic job. The students did a fantastic job as well. Last week we had a community outreach program for parent awareness called Hidden in Plain Sight, which was a parent prevention activity and awareness activity. We had nearly 50 parents attend, and that was a really good showing for that. We've been advertising for many, many months for that. It's been on by the Center for Prevention and Counseling. They did a fantastic job of recreating a teenager's bedroom, what that will look like, and where you can look for some areas of concerns and some indicators of concern from teenagers. So that was a very good partnership with them. As Chris said, the outdoor rec trip just came back. They had not so good luck the first day, but they had fantastic luck the second day, and all you saw was happy smiles and faces. Even Mr. Rupert caught something, I think, which was good, and it was really a great thing. So thank you to the board for supporting that trip. That is a club that started from the grassroots, that started with the advisors that wanted to give to our students something that was missing, and they started that club many years ago. So thank you for them for doing that, because the kids, to see the smile on their face is pretty fantastic. On the other side of the school tonight, we had the Guidance Financial Aid Night going on currently, also being live streamed, so if you need to check that out later on, a good turnout for that, as you can see by the parking lot. We had Veterans Day activities last week, which were kicked off by our Humanities Supervisor, Aldo Diodino, and that was a Library of Congress Veterans Day interviews for veterans that were going to archive throughout the year, so that was kind of the kickoff, was Veterans Day. We also had some guest speakers come in, like Herm Terser, for many of you know, came in and spoke to our history class and some other classes. He's always fantastic to have in. He came in actually with the same exact tie on. I said, Herman, I know you get more flag ties than that, and I only have a couple, but he said, this is one he chose for today. So he did a great job, as usual. We also had a Media Tech video promotion that kicked off that day as well. There's a little brief history and moment of silence on Veterans Day as well, so a very good event overall. Tomorrow we have classroom close-up of New Jersey coming in to view and tape our Media Tech program with Mr. Fenlon and our Media Tech 3 and 4 students. So it's a fantastic opportunity for our students. I believe it's the third time in the recent history that we've had classroom close-up come up and do a show on High Point students and what we're doing in our schools. So it's a great acknowledgement for the hard work of our students and our staff. As Ms. Henry said, Caitlin McMillan is heading out in December down to Maryland. That is a research project that she began in the research program and the symposium that some of you may have saw last spring, and she's now branched into wanting to go and meet with the specialists and experts in the field and go and visit them. So we support that 100%. It's a great opportunity for her. The Candlelight Concert's coming up. That's the 12:10 at 7 p.m. auditorium. Always a great show. Fill the Bus Food Drive is a season, as we said. We'll kick off with that. It's going to be on the 15th. And that goes to the local food pantries for those that are not aware of that, and we are looking forward to a great community event with that. We also have Senior Seminar Day on the 18th, which is again a time when we have partnerships that come in and speak to our seniors about real life experiences that are going on. We're getting ready to already start planning our 8th grade open house, which is on January 7th. And we're looking forward to a fantastic second market, a busy one, but a fantastic one as we begin to get ready for scheduling as well. Some athletic things. If I just continue on to that, Mr. Good, that's okay. Girls soccer, this is busy because we've had a very successful season. Once again, girls soccer, Freedom Division champions, advanced to quarterfinals of the NJSIAA tournament. Boys soccer, Freedom Division champions, advanced to semifinals of NJSIAA tournament, and lost in a heartbreaker, 1-0 on a penalty kick with about 2.5 minutes left. But notice both champions, I believe, for the first time in school history, boys and girls together. So congratulations to both the coaches and the players for a fantastic year. Cross country, boys claimed the Freedom Division Championship. I don't know if you recognize the pattern here. Joe Dragon won the HWS, bear with me for a second, NJAC, North won Group 2 sectional and Group 2 individual championships, and he's not done. This weekend he's going to be at the Media Champions in Homedale. He's pretty good, he's pretty fast, and he's going to keep running for a long time. Girls tennis finished 12-8 this past season. This is a successful season. Field hockey had a fantastic finish. They won 5 of their last 6 games, advanced to the NJSA quarterfinals against a very tough West Essex team that is ranked in the state and played fantastic against them. Football won the season finale, 21-19 over our neighbors at Wallkill. We have an NJAC team's finalization that will be announced at our December board meeting because there's still some changes that are taking place in November for that. And this week alone, we've had several national and intensity from following the newspaper that have been signed by our student athletes. Notice students first, athletes second. Joe Dragon signed with Syracuse, cross country and track. Maddie Smith, basketball, Holy Cross. Sarah Hensel, swimming, Sacred Heart. Emily Hardick, swimming, Westchester. And to top it all off, 2011 graduate Nick Boyle has been playing regularly for the NFL Baltimore Ravens. And he was here for a football game not too long ago, and it was the same Nick as when he was here in 2011. So that's great to see. So that's a little bit of what's going on in the last month. Any questions?
Thanks.
I thought you were going to report on the 20th High Point.
Oh, yes, we're trying to forget
How
that.
some of
Mr.
those
Nelson.
old,
We all look the same, Mr. Nelson, yeah, we all look the same from 20 years ago. Good to see everybody. It was a good time.
I want to understand what happened at the Union State.
That's correct. That's correct. Good. Any questions? Thank you.
Dr. Sawicki?
So I just have a couple of quick updates, and then Mr. Campbell, our supervisor of assessment and evaluation, is going to speak to you about our NJDOE evaluation pilot that we're participating in. Just a couple of quick updates. Our Genesis information system that we'll be switching to next year, we have already ported all of our information that's currently in our Power School system over to Genesis so that we can prepare for our switch to block scheduling next year. There's been a tremendous amount of work beyond their very demanding jobs already by Mr. Talenay, Mrs. Limbo, and Nancy Cook, who almost have like a side job getting ready for block scheduling, working in Genesis and preparing for that. Last Friday, we had a meeting with the leaders of the school scheduling task force to put together a communications plan on how to communicate our switch to block scheduling to the students, and Mrs. Limbo is going to have a parent university on February 18th to invite all the parents to discuss what block scheduling means and that switch. Members of the administration have been meeting with students who requested meetings regarding the Civics Capstone Project, discussing how we implement policy and how we do things like change the course catalog, and it's been a lot of fun to take time out of the day and just talk to students about how we do things. That's been really, really good. We have some upcoming PD in December. On December 2nd, Dr. Lisa Brady will be coming in. Dr. Brady is an expert in random drug testing and school culture regarding substance abuse. And she's going to be speaking to us about her experiences and how she has had in different schools taken on the use of substance abuse. Also coming in, the guidance department and CST requested some PD about some of the new shifts that are taking place in guidance and confidentiality and things like that. And so Dr. Rick Charwin will be coming in on December 17th to present to the guidance counselors on those matters. December 7th through the 13th, we'll be participating in the Hour of Code. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has stated that the #1 skill needed in our economy, in which we import over 100,000 people with visas every year, is coding. All of our freshmen are learning to code in our new 21st Century Skills Seminar, and under the leadership of Mr. Brian Drellick, our new STEM supervisor, it's going to be a fully interdisciplinary hour of code going on in math classes, tech classes, and science classes. So we're very excited for that, and Mr. Drellick wanted me to extend to you, the board members, to come in and learn to code for an hour. You get a free t-shirt that says High Point Hour of Code. But if you want to see what coding's all about, we're also going to be doing a live stream so that the community can see the importance of coding. So we'll be doing all that. The High Point Summit, which will take place January 18th, we have all the planning with that. We just cut off registration at 700 participants.
Wow.
So that's 700 people who are going to be coming up here to see all the good things we have going on with Google Apps, BYOD, and blended learning. And then last, I would like to put some kudos out there for Mark Russell, Mrs. Beth Walton, Mr. Talamay, the vice principals, and Carla Mancuso. Last year we had contracted out for ESL services. This year we're doing everything in-house, and our ESL students are fully integrated. They're performing very well academically, and they are also participating in extracurricular activities. So it is ESL is English as a second language. So these are students. Sorry, thank you. I'm sorry for the edu jargon, Dr. Ripley. ESL are students who come to us who are partially proficient or do not speak any English whatsoever. And so that is a challenge for us and them. And so using our RTI system, ESL is actually a tier 2 intervention, and we're meeting those students' needs, and they're fully integrated and doing very well. We're very, very good at it. And that's all I got. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Campbell, who has a presentation for you on our evaluation package.
Good evening. It's great to be here tonight. It's great to be at High Point. I spent the day in Trenton. I was born in Essex County and raised in this county, and I don't ever want to leave. It's brutal. It's also ironic tonight that I'm on camera. I started filming myself in the past 3 months because the pilot program you're going to hear about tonight is the use of film, the use of camera, so that our teachers can reflect on their practice through technology and through self-evaluation. So my presentations over the summer out in the board office with my fellow administrators, I gave someone a camera and I said, film me. And I went home and I looked at myself and I was thinking, oh my gosh, my head is so big, that I really move my hands that way. And of course, when you do that, we're all our biggest critics and we're all very self-conscious. So the first thing you see are those little traits that you wish you could cover up. But then you get really profound feedback, and that's what we're going to hear about this evening. First, as you came in, I was having some of you log into Socrative, which we'll get to in a second. We're going to hear about the pilot program, which is part of Achieve New Jersey, now entering its 4th year. But first, in addition to filming myself, what I try and do every time I speak to the staff, I try and model what we are trying to promote for them to do. 4 years ago, I had never heard the words formative assessment. Mr. Gibb Carter, who was in the position I hold now, said, I want you to start assessing learning. And most teachers said, well, yeah, I do that. Because the way I typically did it was I would say, okay, we're good. Electoral college, everyone have that? Good. Everyone looking good? Good. And we move on. And we would get a nod of the head. And formative assessment has been the most transformative, most profound tool, and it's incredibly simple to use. We're going to use a sophisticated digital tool tonight. It's not that complicated. It is basically saying, I cannot afford to wait until you take the post-test to find out if you knew what I was talking about. The algebra teacher must know, not at the end of the lesson, but throughout the lesson. The phrase is embedded formative assessment. How many times during a lesson did I check for learning? And the greatest people ask me, how's your new job going? And I said, well, it was tough at first because it's an adjustment, but I loved the past month being in classrooms. I walk into Noah Klimas's room, up on the board, before the bell rings, the kids are seated and they're looking at a multiple choice question from AP Literature and they're answering on Socrative. As the bell rings, within 15 seconds, Mr. Klimas looks over, he has 22 students, he sees that 19 of them got it correct. He says, yes, boom, we're going. That's awesome. Okay, math teachers, Mrs. Abrams, she walks in, she puts up a question which was a representation of what they did for homework, and within minutes she knows that almost every student successfully answered that question. So it's this constant feedback throughout the lesson. Do now is a common buzzword where we ask students to come in and right away do some type of task which shows that they recall yesterday's lesson or mastered the previous night's homework. At the end of lessons, we use exit slips, where we basically say, just on a piece of paper, I have one question for you. Describe for me why that algebraic equation didn't work. And the students have 30 seconds, they write it down as they walk out the door, they hand the teacher a piece of paper. And it doesn't have to become this onerous grading thing, but it's constant checking for learning, and research says that it is by far the greatest way to improve learning. The greatest tool, of course, is children who come from supportive homes and wonderful teachers who do a great job. The greatest innovation in recent years is formative assessment. Some of the more popular ones. You're going to use Socrative in a few moments, Kahoot, Today's Meet, Google Forms, Google Docs, you can do it that way. But simply whiteboards. Mrs. Henry uses dry erase boards, and you give the students a problem, they write it down, every student holds up the dry erase board. I'm now checking 25 students, and yes, I see that we have 2 students over there that don't, I wasn't pointing at you, Dr. Ridley. Okay. We have 2 students over there that perhaps didn't get it. We're checking for learning constantly. I read an article off a Twitter link when a woman said, I've taught algebra for 27 years, I think this is a great lesson. I used the formative assessment, and I found out that more than half of my students got the problem wrong at the point at which I typically moved on to the next concept. That's pretty profound. So here's what we do in class. Typically, if we're going to use Socrative, we'll say to the students coming in, hey guys, log in as Socrative. It was difficult at first. Our BYO access points have gotten so much better. It works pretty well now. So many of you have logged on. If you're in the audience, feel free to go to Socrative. You will be the student, and you enter your teacher's room. My teacher's room is Campbell HP. So what I'll have you do is right now on my phone, I can start the quiz. And it's a very basic quiz I gave. I gave a little bit of math, a little bit of history, a little bit about my presentation. And when I start it, within 30 seconds, it'll pop up on your device. It will take you less than a minute to answer 5 questions. You leave, and I see the results. Or perhaps I give it to you 10 minutes into class. You start the next activity, and while you're on that activity, I go over to my laptop, and I look at the data of 5 questions, and I say, oh wow, number 2, everybody got wrong. So it's kind of neat in that sense. If you are logged on, it should say waiting for your teacher to start the activity. Okay? And if I could digress now back to the main thing I wanted to talk about, which is the pilot program. Okay? And then what I'll give you at the end is a chance to answer a few questions about my presentation, which is really what a formative assessment is.
You're not really going to make us do algebra tonight, though, right?
I tried to make sure the math problems would be fairly simple. Fairly simple.
All right. Now,
Okay.
now I'm nervous. I can't pay attention.
I'm down in Ocean City. I'm getting ready to start my new job. Dr. Zawicki emails me and says, your first day, you're going to the Jersey Shore. So I drive all the way home from Ocean City, and I get in the car and I go back on Monday to Brick. And here's what was neat. I walked in and I met Anthony Fitzpatrick from the Department of Education, and there were 3 other people who said High Point. They were from Delsea and Wall and Jackson, and they said, you're from High Point. And they knew about our Google Summit, and they had heard about some of our other accomplishments. So when the people from the Department of Ed know you, right away I was like, that's right. It's my first day of my new job, and they've heard of my district. That was really flattering. We are a lighthouse district. We were chosen out of, there are more than 600 districts in the state. They chose 20, and we were one of them. Why change how we observe? Well, why wouldn't we? Mrs. Henry and I had a conversation this week. I want our observation process, especially after the conference I had today in Trenton, and all the ideas I heard from the other 19 schools, I want it to be not static, but in flux. I want it to change constantly. We're asking our students to change. We're asking our teachers to change. Why would our administrators say, this is how we observe and we're not budgeting? It must be an ongoing process. We want to promote reflection. We want risk-taking. We say to our teachers, if you haven't stunk at a lesson this year, it sounds like it's fluff, but it's not. If you haven't done a lesson this year that failed, how good do you really want to be? Because coaching, with a lot of great analogies, coaches want to win. They want to win badly. And you do drills in practice that don't work because you'll try anything to get that sweep to work. Well, if you haven't failed in the classroom, how good do you want to be? Third, metacognition. Dr. Zawicki's always talking about this fancy word, and he's got us to understand what it means is, I'm getting to a point where, this is Bloom's taxonomy, basically, not only am I comprehending, not only am I applying, but can I actually create? Can our AP students actually get to the point where a topic can come up and they can create questions in anticipation of how they'll look on the test, give them to classmates, and grade them? That's metacognition. So I asked Corey Little last night, send me a text, I want a quote for my presentation. And she said, that's like a 4 in Danielson. She said, basically, think about it. The old system said the teacher sits back and is given information to consume about how they did. The new system says, evaluate yourself, and you be the participant, you be the one doing the action in the observation process. So we're asking kids to flip how we learn. Why not flip how we observe and make the teacher the central unit in that? The primary component of the pilot is film. There are other, but the primary thing is see yourself film. Every group I've asked, I've had at most one teacher say, yes, I've done it. Wow. So it is a significant change. Now, at the end of the year, because of Achieve New Jersey, every teacher in New Jersey, kindergarten through 12th grade, gets a score of 4.0. It is frustrating to reduce incredibly passionate people to a number, and it hurts sometimes, and it's imperfect. The state says everybody has a number, so right now that's how it is. Your number will still be 80% of what we observe through teaching. Your preparation, your professionalism, and your classroom performance. 20% will be SGOs. SGOs are a process whereby you give students a test, say in October, you measure a specific skill, you set a goal based on that pre-test, and you measure that skill again in April. They're not fun. They have increased conversations among staff about assessments. So they're a pain to do, but they have had that positive effect. Here's how it works if you're in the pilot. A, you film yourself. B, analyze the film, reflect, and then you score your own practice. Then you use surveys, which we could talk about for a half an hour. Some people find this perhaps is more powerful than the film itself, to have a researched, data-driven, formal survey that you give your students, not at the end of the year, not twice a year, but perhaps twice a month, 15, 20 times. Give them a survey and collect data. You then meet with an administrator. Mr. Talame, Mrs. Labrizzi, and others have said they have been the most productive post-observation conferences they've ever had in their career. And you repeat that process. A standard teacher, a teacher who's not in the pilot, has 3 observations. 2 are unannounced, 1 is announced. A teacher in the pilot still has 1 formal observation from an administrator. Twice they have observed themselves on their own, but then meet with an administrator to discuss it. Now you might think, well, that's a lot of autonomy to give the classroom teacher. They still have to do their SGOs. They still have to show their proficiency in Domain 1, that they prepare and develop curriculum. They still have to show Domain 4, their professionalism, their commitment to practice, etc. But keep in mind, of the 30 teachers at High Point who were invited into this program, they are the 30 with the highest summative score. Mrs. Christine Henry is not in danger of being let go. So we take our best and our brightest and we say, we're giving you autonomy and trust because we don't even think twice that your practice is going to suffer. This is the Danielson framework. When the Skip the Act met in August, the teachers said, well, why don't we simply use the same scoring rubric that the administration uses? And so it came from that collaborative process in the Skip the Act that we said, Domain 2 or 3 are 10 scoring points that teachers are evaluated on in the classroom. So now, you film your team. Any name, your favorite. Student logging, give yourself any name you want. But when it says enter teacher's room, you would put Campbell HB. You can make your classroom name whatever you want. You can make it a number. And then it should say that. It should say waiting for teacher. So what we'll do in class often is if we're going to use this, we'll get the students on it, so their device is logged up, ready to go.
I got you. And you're out of the ship.
It's
one of the new ones.
all this, he's not gonna give me his credit card.
Yourself on film, and you go over the same 10 points that an administrator would, and you score yourself, and then you discuss those findings with an administrator. Here are, that would be a sample assessment. A teacher would answer 10 questions like that. Based on the video I saw, just on the 20-minute video I saw, how strong was my rapport during that segment? How strong was my communication? How strong was my questioning, etc. Here are 2 quick questions off of the type of survey. I created a survey, sent it to the teachers. They were welcome to use that or to create their own. All right, 30 teachers were invited. Some of them just felt, I don't know if I want something new. I'm comfortable with the way it is. 21 said yes. Good, bad? Well, I do know this, 21 was the largest number of participants of all of the 20 schools of Trent today. So High Point has the largest participation in the state of New Jersey in the pilot. The Department of Ed wants this program to grow like a weed. They want it, the purpose of the pilot was to find out how self-observation works so that we can successfully incorporate it throughout the entire state. And we have the largest program. I can't overlook, anyone know who that gentleman in the middle is? Woody Hayes, the Ohio State legendary coach. I just pulled the picture off Google, I'm not Ohio State. So again, if you think about how bad you want to win as a coach, why would you not film any classes? These are the 21 exceptional teachers who were in the top 30 and accepted the challenge to try something new. They've been fantastic to work with. I spent 12 hours with this woman today, and she is an amazing person, just nominated as High Point's Princeton Distinguished Teaching Award winner, 2 state titles, 3 kids went through here. Anyway, I'm not going to give a biography of her teacher, but again, she made the analogy to sports. Heather thought that the feedback from the surveys was perhaps the most profound component. Mark, who's incognito right there, again, I'm now seeing myself teach from the eyes of a student. Corey was our test case. When myself, Mr. Drellick, Mr. Diodino applied for our positions and interviewed, we had to score, we had to watch a teacher film, one of the highest rated teachers through Danielson, and we had to assess her performance. And she said after doing it, what everyone said, my voice, my hair, my hands, my mannerisms, there's this self-consciousness that you have to get over. And then she said, it was the single greatest PD experience I ever had. That was pretty profound. And she talked last night about being the teacher, should they be active or passive through the observation process. Amy said the conferences were great. Dave said, every picture Mr. Rupert sent me had a gigantic fish. I didn't want Dr. Sawicki to feel inferior, so I went with James Spader. Talame, particularly fond of the use of surveys. Now at this point I'm almost done, so what I'll do is I'll hit
Mr. Campbell, can I just interject one thing, if you don't mind? The post-observations, people had said to me that the teachers would actually be scoring themselves harder than we do, and when you talk about metacognition, their knowledge of the rubric now, the Danielson rubric, is equal to ours. And it's amazing how they're keying in on some things, and the richness of the conversation and the data that they're bringing is just absolutely impressive, and it's flooring. It's to score together in the same way. It's an awesome experience for me, because I'm learning how to give feedback better by how they're giving me feedback on what they did, if that makes sense. So it's true metacognition all around, and it's been a really positive experience. And Mr. Campbell needs to get some kudos, because he made people feel safe about this, and really got people on board with that, and it's very successful. Anthony was just tweeting to me, asking and texting me, asking how Seamus's presentation is going, because he said the whole NJDOE is extremely proud of High Point.
Well, we also, to Mr. Fitzpatrick, I asked him today, and we started a shared Google Drive, because we had 19 teachers saying, well, what surveys are you using? And I said, do you want my, so the 19 of us are now doing common sense sharing resources.
And we all have surveys you could always use as well.
Right.
We created a lot of us created our own.
Okay. Making filming something that's standard. Just a thought that popped into my head was, we have professional development workshops every other month after school. 2 teachers not in the pilot, or actually every teacher, say to every teacher, say in the month of March, you need to film yourself 12 to 15 minutes. And you pair them up in groups of 2, and for the PD that day, let's sit down together and watch your 12, 15 minutes. Let's watch my 12, 15 minutes. It's 30 minutes of watching and talking. That's not an onerous task, and that's an opportunity for us to have every single staff member this year see themselves on film, year 1 of the pilot. Our next opportunity is how large can we make our participation next year, and what is the next pilot? So filming is perhaps the first experimentation with how we do this. Kind of a thought we had was creating a pathway to some recognition. Can we take some of our best teachers and challenge them and say, you successfully went through the pilot program, do it again, and this year take 2 teachers that work in it and mentor them through the process. And then come up with a recommendation to Skip Diak on how we can enter our next phase of experimentation. So we want to empower teachers. One thing I forgot to mention, one of the biggest drawbacks I got was when I first sent out an email to the 30 people telling them they had 3.5 or better. Their humility and their graciousness was touching, because their response was far from chest bumping. Their response was, I don't like the fact that I've been recognized and my phenomenal colleague has not. So that's something we have to wrestle with, the fact that we don't want a sense of competition in our observations. Is it good to raise a bar and say if you get there you can enter? Yes. But we don't want it to become, we want it to be collaborative, to be coaching, to be constructive, and not to be cutthroat. And the state is also focused on how to set up those guidelines. So what I thought I would do is, if you have a second, you can answer those 5 questions.
Let's put our names in there, but we can use fake names.
You can use fake names, funny names. I asked them to be appropriate names. And then the next presentation can go, the next session of the meeting, and then I can actually take a look at the feedback I got and share it with you in 5 or 10 minutes if it's Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. It was inspiring and exciting to get a look and to see what our staff, our faculty is doing, and how we are attempting to continue to put forward a progressive, student-centered vision where we're doing this collaboratively, where we're trying to become risk takers. Essentially, what we do is we're trying to teach our children to be critical thinkers. And critical thinking has to be done by the staff, by the faculty, by the administration. And critical thinking is asking, why are we doing this? Is this effective? And this is what we're trying to model. And it's very exciting, it's invigorating, and it's not something that I did as a teacher. So for us to be able to come and do this together as a staff is very exciting. And I'm hopeful that the board and the community recognize the commitment to student achievement that our staff has demonstrated in our administration. So we're all in this together, and it's a very exciting opportunity. Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell.
I can just interject. Here are the results as they come in. I put a math problem in there. I think it's particularly helpful in math when you simply put what is the square root of 625. I need to know if you know this, and within seconds I know that everybody knows it. So a typical teacher using this, again, the keys would be they get it kind of logged in before we get going. It literally took me 5 minutes to make that 5-question quiz. It was really simple. And I have live results, and before the class ends, I could then perhaps redirect the lesson. And that would be potentially a really valuable tool.
We'll now move on to action items. Any curriculum instruction technology?
That was really great, though, I have to say. Very exciting stuff. I'm a sucker for that.
You should come with us. We had a lot of good food.
All right, Under curriculum, instruction and technology, we have received the faculty attendance rate, student attendance rate, and a copy of the suspension report for October. And action items, I'm going to move 4, 5, and 6. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report for the period of October 20th, 2015 through November 17th, 2015. And it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the field trips as listed on the attachment roster A5. And it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the professional development activities as listed on the attached roster A6.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. All right, personnel. Number 1, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve an extension of the child care leave of absence from 2744 teacher of English for the 15-16 school year. Seeking a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
And Mr. Veely.
Yes. All right, number 2, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education ratify a 2-year contract agreement between the High Point Regional High School Board of Education and the High Point Administrators Association, HPAA, for the period of July 1, 2015 through June 30, 2017, attachment B1 and B2, seeking a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on item 2?
I have a question, and I vote on this. Should I just abstain? All right, thank you. All right.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Abstain.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. Number 3, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the non-affiliated staff salaries effective July 1, 2015 for the 15-16 school year as listed as attachment B3, seeking a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Abstain.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. All right, combined items 4, 5, and 6, where 4, recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Ed approve Gianni York as a co-op student to work in the custodial maintenance area. Number 5, recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following individuals as substitutes as listed. And number 6, recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve Michelle Minnie as a substitute teacher for the purposes of completing her counseling practice. Seeking a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes on 4 and 5, and abstain on 6.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
And Mr. Veely.
Yes. And number 7 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the creation of a volunteer contemporary a cappella group within the choral program. 2 ensembles would rehearse once a week, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. during the November 18th through December 16th time frame. Student teacher, Mr. Ryan Kennedy, voluntarily would be responsible for selecting, teaching, and conducting all music and all rehearsals with oversight, presence, and support from the music department and staff. Is that?
All in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Extracurricular? Extracurricular, number 1, recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve Bradley Thomas as a volunteer wrestling coach effective for the 15-16 school year pending receipt of criminal history clearance.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Oh, that's volunteer.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Number 2, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve an agreement between Skylands Ice World and the High Point Regional High School District for the 15-16 ice hockey season. Rental of the facility is $4.35 an hour non-prime and $4.52 per hour on prime time.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
And Mr. Veely.
Yes. Number 3 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the appointment of William Percy as an assistant boys basketball coach for the 15-16 school year at step 5, $5,970 on the 15-16 extracurricular salary guide.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. And policy, we have no policy items at this time. Negotiations, Mr. Nelson, is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, we'll be discussing the HPEA contract in executive session tonight, and the intent or the hope is that we will have a vote at the December meeting.
Buildings and grounds, and that is. You want me to do it?
No.
Okay.
Let's group 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just recommended by the superintendent, recommended the board approve disposal of, 1 is a piano keyboard, 2 is disposal of STEM items, 3 is just to-gov deals. Board's disposal of attached, is the attached list.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I just have a question. This is not a discussion. Why do we have the motion to dispose and then we have to have a resolution to dispose? What, that's just a technicality.
It is. That's all
And
it is.
I don't remember seeing that before. We've always done
Every
that.
time.
Yes, yes.
I just haven't been paying
Yes.
attention. Okay. So there's a motion to do this task and then there's a resolution to do this task. Because it's,
Because it involves some deals.
oh, because it's go deals. Okay, okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
And Mr. Veely.
Yes. All right, I'd like to combine items 1 through 7 under finance, where 1 is recommended by the Board of Ed to accept the report of the Board Secretary and Business Administrator report for the month of October. Number 2, recommend we accept the report of the treasurer. 3, recommend we accept the report, or approve the transfers. Number 4, recommended that we approve payment of the attached schedule of audited bills dated November 17th. Recommend that the board accept the agency account, adult education, athletic account, cafeteria account, principal petty cash, school store student activities account, and scholarship account. Number 6, recommended that the board approve the comprehensive maintenance plan for 15, 16, and 7. Recommend that the board approve the annual required maintenance budget worksheet.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on items 1 through 7? Roll call.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
And Mr. Veely.
Yes. Number 8 is recommended that the board approve the agreement between the Monmouth Ocean Educational Services Commission and the High Point Regional High School for participation in coordinated transportation for the 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18 school years.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on these? Roll call.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Risden.
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. Number 9 is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following tuition contracts between High Point Regional High School as the sender and the following districts and the related information as noted.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 9?
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Danner,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Risden,
Yes.
Mr. Beely.
Yes. And number 10, recommended that the board approve the amendment to NCLB Title I for fiscal year 15-16 as per attached in attachment G8.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 10? Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Danner,
Yes.
Mr. Risden,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Beely.
Yes. Transportation, Mr. Miller, if you'd be so good.
Sure. I'd like to move items number 1 and 2. Item number 1, is recommended by the superintendent, the board approves the following joint transportation agreement for the 2015-16 school year. Where where the host is Sussex Wanted, the joiner is High Point, the routes are as listed. Also, the host is High Point, and the joiner is Walk Hill Valley, again, the routes that are listed. And then item number 2, it's recommended by the superintendent that the board approves the following quoted contracts for field trips for the 2015-16 school year by Stocker Bus Company for the routes or the trips as listed.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Danner,
Yes.
Mr. Risden,
Yes.
Mr. Beely.
Yes.
And lastly, I'd like to move item number 3. It is recommended by the superintendent that the board approve the following completed bus evacuation drills for the 2015-16 school year. High Point High School completed their first annual school bus evacuation drill on Thursday, October 22nd, 2015. At the rear evacuation drill was held in front of the school from the times as listed to the routes as listed.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Danner,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Risden,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Beely.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to public comments. If there are any comments, please stand, state your name and address. I guess at the podium. No? No comments? Let's move on to non-committee board member reports and comments. Anybody?
Yeah. Do you want to hear a little bit more from me tonight? No, I attend every month the Ed Services Commission meeting, that is it's combined out Ed Services Commission, which is a group of people that do a lot of different things, mostly in special services for our county, but as we just approved in a previous motion, Ed Services throughout the state will have different abilities to provide services. Sometimes it's buildings and ground services, sometimes it's transportation. What I wanted to bring up in our county Ed Services is they have, and I'm sure we have the list somewhere, I'm sure it's disseminated appropriately through special ed, but they are running regular workshops for parents and students, special needs students, that help out in a variety of areas. The one they just ran last month was, yes, my child can get a job after high school. And it's just a lot of information to help the parents and families of their special needs students. And they really do some pretty cool things over there. And I said I would say that at our meeting so that people in our community would be aware of it as well. So it's something I'm sure is available through our child study team, our special education departments, and I'm sure those people know about it. I'm just saying to the general public that this is what's going on in Ed Services in our county, so they're doing a nice job there.
I attended the Sussex County School Board Association meeting last week, so I thought that I may mention a few things that came up in that meeting. The topic of the night was dealing with declining enrollment. There were two speakers, Art DiBenedetto, the interim superintendent of Verdon Township Schools, and Anthony Schiarello, an attorney with the firms Schiarello, Cornell, Merlino, McKeever, and they each presented on the topic. Mr. Benedetto sort of focused on the causation of the declining enrollment, and Mr. Schiarello had some tips for how to address that. And some of the takeaways, I guess, was that we're all in the same boat, that pretty much every district is affected by declining enrollment to a certain degree or another. I won't go into too many of the details of the things that were proposed, but send receive agreements and shared service agreements were two of the bigger ones. But it was interesting. I think one of the most important takeaways was what Mr. Sciarello had proposed. I'll paraphrase it and just say that the school boards need to get the message out, and they need to let the public and their communities know what they're doing to address the issue. If one were to get their sole information on this from a local newspaper I won't name, the opinion pieces there seem to claim that nothing is being done. Particularly in our district, I think it's worth going on record saying that there are things being done. And I think we know that. I won't mention the details of that, but we do have a send-receive relationship in place. So it was an interesting meeting. I think there was a lot of good information given to the school boards. With that.
What did you say the leading cause was?
He mentioned a number of interesting causes, and I think he was looking through the perspective of the Vernon Township school system in particular. And I think, don't quote me, but their situation is about 40% declining enrollment since 2002, thereabouts. Septic systems of houses. He had actually relayed how he had conversations with realtors in Vernon, and how the realtors, almost to a person, claimed that it was homeowners who were burdened by they could not repair septic systems. They had to replace them fully due to the Highlands Act legislation. The people were just walking away from homes, and he listed a number of how many homes had just been abandoned in Vernon Township. Some other issues were commuting distance and just changing demographics.
That's interesting. If I could just elaborate that on that for a minute or so. Since I've spent my career in the land use planning field and very familiar with this whole issue, I'm sorry the Herald isn't here tonight, but this is the result of 25, 30, 35 years of the policy by the state of New Jersey to prevent growth in this area. And there are good aspects of that. I think everybody likes the greenery that surrounds us. But we're now beginning to see the negative aspects of this no growth policy. And for many years, we were in a stabilized condition, basically. Not much growth, not much decline. What a number of us are fearful of now, not to be overly dramatic, but are we seeing the beginning of a death spiral? And I'm not quite sure what, certainly this board can't do anything about it, but I'm not sure anybody can do anything about it. We'll just have to react to the conditions, the cards that are dealt us. I think that one specific point about High Point, which we've talked about repeatedly, are the number of students that are going to low tech. And if we can at least begin to bring some of them back, that'll help with our enrollment. But I think we're going to continue to see this, even with the Montague agreement in place, over the next 4 or 5 more years, we're going to continue to see the declining enrollment.
Any other comments?
I do. I have a comment unrelated. I'd like to again thank the staff for recording our meetings. I just have 2 questions, and I didn't check our website, but is there a way for the public to access these recordings?
So, Mr. Kevin Fenlon, who is amazing, as you all know, he sets it up. He takes the card out, and then the next day uploads it to our YouTube channel. So on our website, if you click on the bottom little icon for YouTube, you go in there, there's a channel that says BOE Meetings. Mr. Talamay, myself, and Mr. Ripley also tweeted out the link the morning after the BOE meeting to the YouTube channel. So it's out there, and then that gets retweeted by High Point as well. So it's right there, and then also in the posted minutes, right, we're putting the link there as well, so folks can go to the minutes, see the text, and also click on the link.
Is there a way, and maybe this is redundant, but it'd be, for somebody like me who goes to the picture and I'm like, well, where is it? Because I'm not good at looking through all the levels. In that place where it says current agendas, archive of minutes, all that, those lists that are over there, is there a way you could add the link to that list?
Or we can say minutes and link to videos, and
Yes,
this way you see the
somewhere so that it
minutes.
says it in the text
Sure,
on that
we can do
page,
that.
so that it's,
No problem.
it took me a little while to figure
No
that
problem.
too. Because texting.
The idea of making with the YouTube channel is because every day our announcements are on the YouTube channel and all of our amazing student productions. So the idea was if people go to the YouTube channel and see the board minutes, they would also see all the amazing things our students are doing. So it was kind of like
And
like
I
a
like
hook,
that.
like a hook.
That's a hook. I like that. And you could, just because it says it in the text doesn't mean you're not still going to the exact same site, which
You're
is
going to-
our YouTube
Yep,
channel.
you're going to the exact
Once
same
they
place.
go there, they find the
Absolutely,
board
we'll do that
meeting
with
and
redundancy.
all the
No
other
problem.
cool stuff.
We'll do that.
I tell you, I looked at it last month, after last month, very well received, good job.
Thank you.
Well, it's
Very
well
good.
done.
I'll let Mr. Fenley know.
And how did you look after you seen yourself on? How did you?
My hair!
Like I
My
always do. No comment.
And lastly, I'd just like to address a comment that had been made by members last month about our executive session. I just want to be clear and state for the record that if anyone had taken that in any kind of negative way, when we announce when we're going into executive session, we don't just chit chat and sit and eat food. We do exactly what we say we're going to do. So if anyone had taken that out of context or decided to run with it, that is not the case.
Enough business.
Anymore. So then let's move on, now that we've approached that subject. Executive session, motion will be made that the High Point Regional High School Board of Education enter executive session to reconvene at the board office to discuss resumes for the SBA BS vacancy, is that how you have it?
Yes, board secretary.
Board secretary, okay. And personnel and HPEA negotiation items which are exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public when appropriate. Minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. The board will reconvene in public session in the board office at the conclusion of the executive session. Action may be taken, how long approximately? 45 minutes approximately in executive session. See you.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Correct.